I smiled and handed my daughter the grocery list. Then my suitcase. She blinked. Wait, you're leaving? That flicker behind her eyes, confusion tipping into fear, was sweeter than cider. I took my coat off the hook, slow and deliberate, then held out the Airbnb receipt like a declaration of freedom. I'll be in Boone till the 26th. You said everyone's coming? Perfect. You're in charge. It was December 20th, just after noon, and the oven was off for the first time in 2 decades. My kitchen, bright with North Carolina sun, smelling faintly of cinnamon potpourri and pledge, had never felt so still. Tanya stood in the middle of it like a stranger, her phone still open to the family group text where she'd sent out her now famous holiday decree. Christmas at Mom's. Food. Beds. The whole shebang. Don't worry, she's used to it. She was used to it, but not anymore. I watched her lips part and close like a goldfish. You can't just leave. I can, I said, zipping up my suitcase. I booked 5 nights in Boone. Left you the Costco card. Groceries are on page 2. Instructions for the dishwasher are taped above the sink. 12 adults and 3 toddlers. Mom, that's not fair. Fair? I folded my arms. You sent me a menu and a head count, baby. You assigned me chores in my own house. You dropped off your babies with an overnight bag and called it a gift. You forgot who this house belongs to. She didn't speak, but I saw the truth hit. Her gaze flicked to the corner cabinet, the one with the faded 1997 deed inside, still in my name. Her jaw clenched. I'll be back the 26th, I said softly, brushing past her to set my key on the counter. Not my house key, that one was staying with me, but the spare. The one she'd asked for 3 times last week. I left it anyway. She needed to feel what it meant. I turned once, just before the door. The wreath I'd made from real pine cones hung crooked. The bows she'd never helped tie drooped slightly. It was my house, my labor, my legacy. Now it was her turn to carry the weight. And the real surprise, well, that was still coming. By the next morning, the house was humming again, but not with my doing. I sat at my dining table, alone but peaceful, 2 eggs over medium on a chipped ceramic plate, steam curling from my mug. The local paper sat folded beside my planner. Outside, frost kissed the edge of the porch railing on Providence Road, and I could hear the squeals of my grandbabies echoing faintly down the hall. They'd all arrived last night. Tanya's husband parked crooked in my driveway. Her cousin Sherry lugged in a rice cooker like it was a trophy. The twins darted through the foyer like they owned the place. And I'd just sat in the kitchen with my bags packed, waiting for dawn. At 6 a.m., it was just me, the pine wreaths, and the soft ticking of the old brass clock above the sink. That clock had been Cheryl's. I remembered her saying, "Time's the only thing you can't buy twice. Spend it like cash." She used to bring sweet potato pie and a sharp tongue to every Christmas we hosted together, back when Tanya was still grateful and the air didn't hum with expectation. My daughter was still asleep, curled up in my guest room like a college student home for break. That same room I'd repainted 3 times. Soft peach walls, gold-trimmed mirror, linen drapes. She always came back like it was hers, like I was the one visiting. But she hadn't earned this home. I had. I looked over at my planner, its spine split from years of wear. Each page scribbled with someone else's needs. Doctor's visits, preschool pickups, Tanya's vacation flights I'd paid for and tracked. Not once did I block off time for myself. Not one damn entry read, "Nap, massage, sit still and breathe." I ran my finger down the edge of the table. Same dining table I'd refinished after Cheryl passed. Seats 8. Cherry wood. Cost me $900 back in 2002 and a week of work to strip, sand, and stain it. They don't make tables like that anymore. Sturdy, quiet, unshakable. Like me. That house was mine, deed and all. Bought it on my own after James left in 92, when Tanya was just 10. I'd signed every loan paper, paid every utility, fought off every mosquito in that yard while she played with chalk on the sidewalk. She didn't know how much I'd carried, but I did. And that morning, while she slept under my roof, dreaming of cider bars and potluck platters, I whispered a prayer, not for her, not even for peace, just for clarity. Because something had cracked wide open, and it wasn't going to be patched up with one polite, "Thank you." The smell of sage and browned butter still haunted my kitchen, even though I hadn't lifted a single pan this year. For 23 straight Christmases, I'd hosted the whole family. Every cousin, stepchild, great aunt, and straggler. Tanya never asked, just assumed. From the time she was 12, she'd watch TV while I roasted 2 birds and steamed collards for hours. She never once said, "Mama, let me." Not even in her 20s, when she moved back in twice between leases. I used to wear a green apron that said, "Santa's sous chef, bought it at Belk in '01. I wore it every year like a costume because that's what holidays had become, performance. I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m. to start the sweet potato casserole. By 6, the ham was in. By 8, my feet were swollen in Dollar Tree compression socks. No one noticed. All Tanya ever noticed was when I forgot to put the cranberry sauce in a bowl. She and the rest would show up, like they were clocking in to a party I threw. Not a dish in their hands. No foil-covered yams. No store-bought desserts. Not even napkins. I once hinted, "It'd be nice if someone brought drinks." Her response? "Oh, I thought you liked doing everything." The insult wasn't in her words. It was in her comfort. Every Christmas Eve blurred together now. Tanya flitting between rooms in heels, sipping cider while I scrubbed grease pans, her husband nodding off in my recliner while I wiped counters. Then, like clockwork, they'd leave by 7:30, said they had to beat traffic. I'd be left with 2 bags of half-eaten rolls, a kitchen full of dishes, and that ache behind my knees that no amount of ibuprofen could touch. I never complained. Not once. I smiled through it, every time. That's what they wanted from me. That's what I thought made me a good mother. Showing up, holding steady, not making a fuss. But last year changed me. I remember standing in this same kitchen, bent over the sink, Tanya's voice behind me asking if I'd ironed the kids' holiday outfits. I was elbow deep in dishwater, my hands cracked from cold and bleach. And I realized something. I wasn't just tired, I was empty. December's utility bill had hit $412. Between the guests, the baking, the heat, the Christmas lights, and Tanya running 2 loads of laundry for her kids, my water heater sounded like it might give out. I'd saved the bill, highlighted it in yellow, tucked it into the drawer under the microwave, just to remind myself, this costs me. I pulled it out this morning and stared at it again. They all think I run on magic, but I pay. I always paid. And this year, I was done handing out miracles. I stood in Tanya's old room that afternoon, the peach walls soft with December light, and for a moment, I saw her at 10, knees skinned, puffing out her cheeks with frustration as she struggled through her math homework. That was the last year her father ever picked her up. He left in July, left a note and half a rent check. Tanya stood at that window for days, waiting for a car that never pulled back into the driveway. She asked questions I didn't have the breath to answer, and after a while, she stopped asking altogether. I raised her alone. No child support, no weekend visits. I drove a sputtering Corolla to 3 jobs at once, and when that wasn't enough, I braided hair on Sundays in this very room. My knees ached from standing, my fingers cramped from twisting, but Tanya always had what she needed. Ballet classes, summer camps, a flute we couldn't afford. I made it happen. Even now, the closet smelled faintly of old, scented lotion and bubblegum lip gloss. I reached for the photo album on the shelf, the red one with the cracked spine. Inside, a hospital bill for $4,216 from her broken arm in 98 field trip permission slips, signed "Emergency Contact Me," and a graduation photo where she barely smiled. Page after page, the proof of my mothering stared back. Her first car, a used Honda I co-signed and paid off when she fell behind. Her college tuition, pieced together from scholarships, and a $78,000 parent loan that took me 12 years to finish paying. She never knew about the time the lights were cut off because I sent her rent money instead. Mother's Days came and went. Sometimes I got a text. Sometimes not even that. Miss D next door used to help me with Tanya when she was little. D would walk her to school if I had a shift. Brought over casseroles when I was too tired to cook. D once said, "You keep giving her the sun, baby, and she might never learn to light her own lamp." I didn't understand then, but I do now. I had made myself invisible so she could shine. And now, she couldn't see me at all. I sat on her old bed and looked around at the room I'd maintained all these years. Fresh sheets, clean windows, a lamp she used to love. She had no idea that everything she took for granted was carried on my back. And yet she'd treat me like staff in my own home. A helper. A fixture. Not a person. Not a mother who had bled to build her life. I sat in my home office later that evening, the room Tanya once called Mom's little command center, surrounded by boxes of tax files and old receipts. The lamp buzzed faintly overhead. My reading glasses perched on the bridge of my nose, and a pen tapped a slow rhythm on the desk as I scrolled through the email folder I'd named. Almost jokingly, transfers to Tanya. 9 years of motherly patches and plugs, all documented, all digital. There it was, April 4th, 2018. $112.49 for last-minute daycare fee. June 2020, $450 labeled car repair emergency. November 2022, $300 for holiday shopping. Promise I'll pay back. The promises faded, but the transactions didn't. I tallied every Venmo, every Cash App, every bank transfer. $17,580 over 9 years, all while my own water heater rattled, and I kept postponing new tires. And the unpaid favors? The last-minute grandkid pickups when she got caught up. The weekends I lost to teething fevers and sticky fingers so she could have a break. Those never made it onto paper, but I wrote them down now. 42 unexpected babysitting days since 2019. At $75 a day. Because if I don't count it, who will? That's another $3,200 in stolen time. Funny how invisible love becomes so vivid once you put a price on it. Mr. Braddock at the South State Credit Union had asked me once, real gentle, "You sure about all these transfers, Ms. Ellis? Just want to make sure it's still working for you." That was 2 years ago, when Tanya started treating my checking account like her personal overflow fund. I'd waved him off then. It's just family helping family. But family doesn't send emoji-laced requests like invoices. "You're the best, Mom. Need just $80 till Friday. Red heart, folded hands, medium skin tone." I had folders of these messages, screenshots with timestamps, the digital DNA of dependency. And what hit hardest wasn't the money. It was how expected it all became. No asks, just assumptions, like the groceries that refilled themselves, the fridge that never stayed empty, the woman who was never thanked. I looked over at the filing cabinet in the corner, drawer labeled household. It held the deed, the will, the insurance, all in my name, all earned. And yet Tanya walked through these walls like she owned the air. I took a deep breath. I wasn't angry anymore, just awake. And the more I documented, the more awake I became. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to print every receipt, prepare every page, and remind them, in language they understood, that care has a cost. The message came at 10:37 p.m. on December 1st. I was sitting up in bed, already halfway through my crossword, when my phone pinged with that cheerful little trill Tanya had set for our family thread. Brooks Family Xmas Christmas Tree Red Heart. I opened it, expecting the usual, maybe another baby photo, maybe one of those viral recipes she loved sharing but never cooked. What I saw instead made my stomach tighten. Tanya had forwarded a text to the whole group. "We'll all stay at Mom's. Free food and beds, LOL. Don't worry. Mom's used to it. Cold sweat, smile, red heart. Used to it." My thumb hovered over the screen, my eyes tracing those 6 words again and again. I didn't respond, didn't need to. There it was, my role, decided and distributed without my say. The sting behind my eyes came fast, that little swell of heat just before a tear dares to show up. I blinked hard. Up until that moment, I'd told myself I was imagining things. That maybe Tanya was just overwhelmed. That maybe the Thanksgiving silence wasn't personal. That maybe I'd misread her tone last time she said, "You're just so good at hosting, Mom." But that text? That was the truth laid bare. Not "can we?" Not "would you be up for it?" Not "let's plan this together." Just a casual announcement to 14 other people that my house and my labor were open for business. And then came the replies. "Cherie, yes, Mom's cooking is the best. Micah, Shotgun the guest room, lol. Aunt Vernice. Bless her heart, we are spoiled. Not a single one asked me. I stared around my bedroom, the soft beige curtains swaying slightly with the draft. This was my sanctuary. My mattress, paid off in installments. My bookshelf, filled with dog-eared devotionals and Toni Morrison. My space. And suddenly, it felt hijacked. I screenshot the message. I wasn't sure why at the time. Just an instinct, like when the air shifts before a storm. I saved it in a folder I'd just started called Holiday 2024. Evidence. Felt dramatic, maybe. But I'd learned something that year. People rewrite history when it suits them. I clicked the lamp off and lay back in the dark. I could hear Tanya moving in the guest room down the hall, still unaware I'd seen the message, still believing I'd be flattered. But I wasn't. I was furious. And I knew, deep in my bones, that something old and sacred had snapped. 10 days after the group text, she sent the menu like she was managing a conference. I was sitting in the Harris Teeter parking lot, groceries in the trunk from my regular weekly run, half for me, half for Tanya's kids, because they'd already eaten through everything I bought last time, when my phone dinged again. I glanced at the screen. A new text, same cheerful thread. Brooks family Christmas, Santa Claus medium skin tone red heart, from Tanya. Hey y'all, here's the menu so far. Mom will do 2 turkeys, green beans, vegan, sweet potatoes, no marshmallows this year please, cider station, rolls, and banana pudding. Let us know if you have requests. Let her know. Like I was the help. I stared at the message, thumb frozen. My trunk beeped itself closed behind me. A family passed by my car with matching pajamas and cocoa in hand. Their little girl was humming. Jingle bells. Off-key and full of joy. I felt the hollowness in my chest crack open like a dropped ornament. It wasn't the food. It was the assumption. Again, 2 turkeys. Like roasting 120-pound bird wasn't enough. Vegan green beans? Banana pudding for 17 people? A cider station? There was no, would you be up for it? No coordination. No offer to contribute. Just a directive, signed, sealed, and dropped in my lap like a command. I tapped the screen and scrolled up, just to double check. Yep. No one else had been assigned a thing. Sherry sent a heart emoji. Aunt Vernice wrote, "Sounds perfect." Of course it did. It always sounded perfect when I was the one behind the curtain, sweating. I sat there in the car with my hands in my lap, the plastic grocery bag handles leaving red dents on my fingers. It wasn't just the food. It was how they thought of me. Not as a hostess, or even a mother. As an unpaid employee. A holiday concierge. When Tanya was little, she'd draw me crayon pictures. Mommy, me, a house with too many windows. Now I was the windows. The backdrop. Not even part of the picture. I didn't reply. Just sat, watched the sun start to dip behind the treetops, and let the ache settle. That night, at the library, I vented to Denise between shelving returns. She looked at me over the top of her glasses and said, "Dry as cornbread. Why don't you just say no?" I blinked. "It's Christmas." Denise raised an eyebrow. "So?" And that's when the first seed planted itself in my mind. Just one word. No. 2 days before I handed over that suitcase, Tanya showed up at my door with diapers and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're going to take a little time for ourselves before the madness starts," she said, breezing past me into the living room. "You'll have the kids tonight." Thought it'd be a nice early Christmas surprise. She dropped the diaper bag on my couch like it was a gift. I stared at her. Without asking me? She laughed like I'd made a joke. "Come on, Mom, you love having them. They've been so excited to stay at Grandma's." I looked down at the bag. 1 extra pair of pajamas, a bottle of grape Tylenol, 2 crushed granola bars, and a note in Tanya's quick cursive. "Sleepover kit for Grandma's house. Heart, heart, heart." It felt like a dagger wearing a bow. I glanced toward the kitchen table, still cluttered with grocery ads and lists she had scribbled. "You didn't even ask." Tanya waved me off. "You always say yes. Figured I'd save us the extra text." "Save us." I swallowed the reply in my throat. Not because I didn't have one, but because I knew it wouldn't change anything in that moment. She wasn't seeing me, just her own need. I watched as she kissed her kids goodbye and tossed me a wink. "Love you! You're the best!" And then she was gone. The silence afterward was heavier than the toddler's. I sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. One of the kids had already started pulling books from the lower shelf. The other was climbing the side table like it was a jungle gym. I didn't scold them, didn't even move. I just sat. On the end table, half hidden under a pile of old bills, was a folder Tanya had left behind last year during open enrollment season. Inside were her kids' medical insurance forms. I flipped through them without thinking. There it was, in black ink. Alternate guardian, Ramona Ellis, grandmother. Still on the forms, still the fallback, still the unpaid, unasked, always on-call safety net. Later that evening, after they were asleep and I was wiping applesauce off the baseboards, I called Miss Connie from my HOA. "I ever tell you," I said, breathless, "that I'm apparently not just a mother but also a default daycare?" She chuckled low. "Oh, baby, you're the whole infrastructure." And that's when the numbness really hit me. Not sadness, not even anger. Just the kind of cold you feel when someone steps over you so many times, you stop noticing the footprints. But I was starting to notice now, and I was writing everything down. That night, after Tanya left her kids and vanished into whatever date night fantasy she'd planned, I found myself doing what I'd always done: folding, wiping, planning, surrendering. I stood outside my own bedroom door, her children finally asleep in the guest room, and stared at the hallway calendar. A row of neatly written reminders in red pen. Clean fridge, prep turkey, decorate front porch, order cider refills. Every square inch of December was packed with labor. Not one note said rest. Not one said sit. Tanya had filled in most of it. Her handwriting, her vision, my home. I leaned against the door frame, bone-tired but buzzing with that old reflex to make it work. My mind kept replaying that little girl in peach pajamas with her stuffed lion under one arm. How I used to braid her hair while she slept, whisper prayers over her dreams. I knew this cycle. I knew the way it pulled me back, made me forget. So when she called me at 11:04 that night, voice sweet as sorghum syrup, I didn't tell her how I'd cried wiping applesauce from my hardwood floors. I didn't say how the baby had bitten me trying to avoid bedtime. I didn't mention that I hadn't eaten dinner yet. I said, "All right, we'll make it work." Silence on the other end, then a sharp inhale. "I knew you'd come through, Mom. You always do." That's what did it. The always. I hung up, slowly, deliberately. Then I stood there with my phone in hand, the line still buzzing faintly like a wound. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I laid down, but my body didn't rest. My mind kept drifting to Cheryl's voice in my head, that dry drawl she used when calling things what they were. "You're not building a family, Mona. You're maintaining a fantasy, with a mop in one hand and a wallet in the other." I stared up at the ceiling fan spinning slow above me, listening to the hush of my own home, now crowded with other people's needs. And I thought, this is what it means to die quietly, not in body, but in identity. To become a set of functions: cook, cleaner, sitter, erased beneath the word mom. But I said yes anyway, because old habits wear disguises. They come dressed as love, wrapped in obligation, laced with guilt. And after 66 years of making room, what was one more concession? I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I said yes without flinching. Because the mirror was waiting, and she was about to ask me a question I couldn't dodge. At 5:45 a.m. on December 20th, I stood barefoot in the bathroom, staring into the mirror. The light was harsh, too bright for morning, but I didn't flinch. I needed to see everything: the creases around my eyes, the scar above my lip from when I fell off the porch step in, 99. The softness in my cheeks that used to hold more tension. The woman who'd survived things nobody clapped for. My suitcase sat by the door, zipped and waiting. I looked myself dead in the eye and said aloud, quiet but steady, "You don't owe them Christmas." The words felt foreign at first, like speaking in a language I once knew but had forgotten. But the mirror didn't blink. It held me, held that truth. Tanya was still snoring in the guest room, her babies curled around her like vines. She had no idea what was shifting in the next room. And I wasn't angry. Not then. I was clear. The kind of clarity that doesn't need noise. The kind that grows in silence, when you're finally done apologizing for your own needs. I brushed my teeth slow, washed my face like I had all the time in the world. I didn't check my phone, didn't glance at the calendar taped to the fridge. I didn't even think about the sweet potatoes still sitting in the pantry. Let them sprout. On the counter sat the printout. 5 nights in Boone, cabin-style rental, fireplace, no Wi-Fi. $987 already paid. I'd booked it on a quiet whim 3 days prior, during lunch break at the library. It had felt like an act of rebellion then. Now it felt like rescue. I remembered what Cheryl used to say whenever I hesitated to take a break. Boundaries are blessings, Mona. And blessings require doors, sometimes locked ones. I smiled faintly, opened the medicine cabinet, and placed a sticky note inside for myself. You matter, especially when it's inconvenient. Then I zipped my coat, turned off the bathroom light, and rolled my suitcase toward the hallway. Each wheel click on the hardwood sounded like a drumbeat. Click, click, click. I passed the guest room, didn't look inside. Let them sleep, let them figure it out. In the foyer, I paused, one hand on the front door, the other pressing that reservation printout flat against my chest. The house didn't feel like a trap anymore. It felt like a checkpoint, a boundary line, and I was finally stepping over it. Not running away, not making a scene, just leaving, fully aware, for the first time in a long time, that I was choosing me. By 7 a.m. that same morning, I was on my porch, wrapped in my old shawl, sipping coffee from the mug Cheryl gave me 20 years ago, the one that says, "Not today, Satan." The sky was barely pink, and my phone rested face down beside me. I could hear the soft hum of the heater kicking on. I didn't look toward the guest room. I didn't need to anymore. Instead, I opened my South State banking app. I'd rehearsed this in my mind for days, but my fingers still trembled a little. First, the grocery delivery. I tapped into the pending Instacart order Tanya had placed using my account, scheduled for 10 a.m., $498.71. Cancel. The app gave me one last chance. Are you sure? I smiled. I'm sure. The second move, Tanya's recurring Friday auto transfer. $150 every week, like clockwork. She'd stopped thanking me for it 2 years ago. Last month, she messaged, "It didn't come through. Is your account low?" Like my generosity was just another broken service. I scrolled to the setup and revoked the rule. Gone. The balance refreshed. And just like that, $500 returned to my checking. Not much to some, but it felt like a key turned in a lock. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed. Tanya, why is the Instacart canceled? Tanya, Mom? The groceries aren't coming. Tanya, we need the cider and the almond milk for Micah's allergies. I thought you said you were handling it? I stared at the messages, didn't open them. Just let them stack up like junk mail. Across the street, Terry, my neighbor 2 doors down, was dragging her recycling bin to the curb. She gave me a little wave. I nodded back. Mr. Braddock had once told me, "Ms. Ellis, you sure you want that access set up like that? We can put safeguards in place. No third-party draws, limited transfers, alerts when withdrawals exceed a threshold." I'd declined back then. Guilt wore a mother's voice. But that morning, I tapped into settings and added new limits. Flagged Tanya's email and phone for alerts. Changed my PIN. Selected the option. No external account access without phone confirmation. A pop-up appeared. Do you wish to notify a representative for help securing your account? Yes. 10 minutes later, Mr. Braddock himself called. Everything all right, Ms. Ellis? It is now. I flagged the account. Nobody's draining you again. Not while I'm watching. I leaned back, let the cold air touch my face. Freedom wasn't loud. It didn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it sounded like the clink of a canceled transaction. Sometimes, it looked like your own name, only your name, on a bank account again. For the first time in years, I felt like I was cashing in on my own peace. By 10:12 a.m., I was standing at the public printer in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library on Randolph Road, clutching a manila folder thick with evidence. Denise from the front desk raised an eyebrow when she saw me loading a full ream of paper into the tray. "You writing a book?" she joked. "In a way," I said. "A little family memoir," she laughed. But I didn't. Not fully. I'd already spent an hour combing through my laptop, dragging documents into one folder. Bills, texts, screenshots, scanned bank statements, past Christmas receipts, utility spikes, transfer records. I titled the folder Holiday Burden 2012 to 2024 and saved it twice. Once to the cloud, once to a red USB key I now kept in my purse. This wasn't revenge. It was accounting. I printed the Instacart confirmation and the cancellation, the text where Tanya said you're used to it, the Christmas group chat with her menu. I printed the record of transfers, 17 grand over 9 years. The electric bill from last December, $412. The screenshots of every message that started with, "Can you just?" I stapled them neatly, labeled them by year, slid each packet into a tabbed binder. As the last stack spat out of the printer, Denise wandered over. "You really are doing it," I nodded. "I'm tired of history getting rewritten." She leaned closer. "You gonna show her all this?" "Eventually," I said, sliding the final packet into place. "But not until it's undeniable." She let out a low whistle. "I ever cross you? Remind me to apologize early." We both laughed, but underneath mine was steel. I remembered all the times Tanya told people I loved doing everything. That I insisted. That I was so good at it. As if that justified the way she never helped, never cleaned, never offered. As if a lifetime of service came with no receipt. Well, now I had one. I paid $87 over the years, just printing for other people. School forms, resumes, party invites, Tanya's baby shower flyers. Never charged a dime. Never asked for ink reimbursement. This time, I paid gladly. $7.80 for today's pages. The price of clarity. I placed the binder in my tote bag and zipped it shut. Outside, the air smelled like cold and pine mulch. Christmas lights blinked along the library's eaves. A little girl in a tinsel hat skipped past, her mother calling behind her. I stood still for a long moment, the weight of the bag on my shoulder, the binder firm against my side. It didn't feel like vengeance. It felt like protection. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I was going to show the math. At noon, I knocked twice on Terry's door, 2 houses down. She opened it, wearing her gardening gloves and a puzzled frown. "Everything okay?" she asked, brushing dirt off her sweatshirt. I held up a small envelope. Inside were the house key, my alarm code, and an emergency contact list. Just going out of town for a few days. If anything strange happens, too many cars, too many voices, anything at all, call the police. Don't knock, just call. Terry's eyes sharpened. She stepped aside so I could come in. "All right. What's going on?" I stepped into her warm kitchen, where the scent of rosemary and soap mixed with the steam from her tea kettle. Tanya invited half the family to stay in my house for Christmas. Didn't ask, just told. Thought I'd be here cooking and cleaning for free again. Terry raised an eyebrow. "She's done this before?" "For 23 years. She let out a slow whistle and took the envelope from my hand. "Well, not this year," I smiled, small and sure. "Not this year." We sat at her kitchen table while I showed her the binder. Not all of it, just a few pages. Just enough for her to understand this wasn't a spat. It was a system, and I was breaking it. She slid the key into her drawer, right next to her mail and pepper spray. "I'll keep an eye. And if they give me trouble, well, I've got Officer Bell's number on speed dial. He's my nephew. Play 0 games." I laughed softly, the tension slipping from my shoulders. "You always were the neighborhood watch." "I'm also nosy," she said, "and loyal." We filled out a simple note for the HOA. Terry listed as my temporary contact while I was away, with authority to report disturbances. I left her the updated alarm code, changed just that morning to something only I could remember. 12,201,997, the date I signed the deed. And as I stepped back into the brisk midday air, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, secured, not just by locks and cameras, but by someone who saw me, not as a vessel, not as an ATM, but as a woman worth defending. At the end of the block, Tanya's car sat idle in my driveway. I didn't wave as I passed it. Didn't flinch. She didn't know the code had changed. She didn't know the neighbors were watching. She didn't know the house wasn't hers. Not in duty, not in silence, not anymore. Inside my tote bag, the binder settled heavily against my hip like armor. This wasn't just my house now. It was my line. At 3 p.m., I taped the note to the fridge and stepped back. White printer paper, black marker, no frills, just my handwriting, clear and final. Welcome. The house is yours till the 26th. Groceries are labeled. Dishes are in the cabinet. Clean up after yourselves. I'm not on duty. I'm on vacation. Love, Mom Yellow Heart. I stuck a heart at the end. I don't know why. Maybe out of habit. Maybe because I didn't want to leave venom, just truth. I looked around the kitchen one last time. The sunlight slanted in through the blinds, casting long golden bars across the counter. The house smelled like cinnamon and lemon balm. Clean, full, untouched. Not yet taken over. The table was clear. No holiday tablecloth. No centerpieces this year. The serving platters stayed in the cabinets, high up where they belonged. I'd left one roll of paper towels on the counter. One. If they wanted more, they'd find the storage themselves. I left the thermostat at a reasonable 68. I unplugged my slow cooker, turned off the porch lights. On the island, I set out a few basics. The Costco card, one casserole dish, a trash schedule from the city website. The kind of materials that would normally be in my hands, but this year would sit untouched, unless someone else moved. I didn't linger. I didn't hover near the door waiting for Tanya's reaction. I didn't wait for footsteps or car doors. I had made my exit that morning. I wasn't making a scene. The fridge note would do the talking. As I stepped onto the porch, I heard a car door slam, then laughter. One of Tanya's cousins, judging by the volume. More would be coming soon. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and checked my mirrors. The passenger seat held my overnight bag, my groceries for the cabin, and my scarf still warm from the dryer. I didn't look back. There was no speech, no argument, no slammed doors, just absence. That was the gift. Sometimes leaving quietly speaks louder than any fight. I pulled out of the driveway just as Sherry's minivan turned onto the street. She didn't recognize my car, didn't wave, just kept driving, like everything was normal. But it wasn't normal anymore. And when Tanya walked into that kitchen and saw the note, saw the tidy island, the unlit stove, the empty hallway, she'd feel it. This wasn't a rebellion. This was a relinquishing. Not with rage, but with readiness. I wasn't theirs to summon anymore. Let them make their own Christmas. On Christmas Eve at 7 p.m., my phone rang just as the fire crackled low in the Boone cabin's hearth. I was curled on the porch, swing with a blanket across my knees, mug of cider in hand, breath visible in the mountain chill. Behind me, inside the rental, a soft jazz playlist hummed from a Bluetooth speaker. Marcia, the Airbnb host, had left me a warm casserole and a handwritten card. Rest well. You've earned it. The voicemail hit my phone like a gust through an open door. Tanya, voicemail. Mom, what is this? You just left? With no warning? There are 15 people here. 2 of the kids are crying. The oven's cold, and I can't even find the roasting pans. I thought you were doing the cider. I told everyone. Why would you do this? She paused. One of those silences that held the threat of tears or tantrums. Maybe both. You could have at least thought of the kids. Mike is allergic to half the snacks Cherie brought. Do you even care how hard this is for me right now? Click. I didn't press play again. I didn't need to. It was the same language, just turned inside out. Guilt as a leash. Concern framed as condemnation. She hadn't asked if I was okay. She hadn't said sorry. She'd only said, how could you? Because in her mind, my absence was a betrayal. But really, it was just a boundary. I didn't reply. Instead, I saved the voicemail and transcribed it into my binder later that night, just below a screenshot of the grocery text she'd sent 2 weeks earlier. Don't worry, Mom's used to it. Used to it. Used. That night, as the wind tapped against the cabin windows, I took a long bath, let my limbs float in eucalyptus-scented silence. I rubbed lotion into my feet. I said grace over a plate I didn't have to serve. Then I sat by the fire and let the logs burn down low. No kids screaming. No timer beeping. No expectations. Just peace. Tanya's voice was still in my ear, even with the phone turned over. But it didn't rattle me. It didn't pull me back. Because that wasn't a daughter's plea. It was a woman realizing, for the first time, that the house didn't run on magic. It ran on me. And this year, I was somewhere else. Living. Not leaving. Letting them taste the silence I used to swallow. And it was only just beginning. I pulled into my driveway at 4:02 p.m. on December 26th, 2 full days after Tanya's voicemail. The house looked fine from the outside, calm, festive even. A deflated reindeer leaned against the porch banister, and bits of red tinsel fluttered in the breeze. But as soon as I stepped inside, the still air turned sour. It hit me first in the kitchen. Sour milk, burnt sugar, and the unmistakable funk of something left too long in the trash. Dishes were stacked in the sink like a Jenga tower. The banana pudding tray, half-eaten, sat open on the counter, flies circling. Someone had spilled cider on the rug and never cleaned it. I spotted a wine stain near the leg of my dining chair. A pile of wrapping paper overflowed from the recycling bin, dragging ribbon onto the floor like seaweed after a storm. And the kids. The kids were yelling upstairs, tired, overstimulated, loud. Tanya stood near the fridge, one hand braced on the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her hair was frizzed, her shirt stained with something dark and sticky. She looked up and froze. "Mom!" Her voice was hoarse. She glanced behind her, like maybe she could clean it all in a blink, explain it away. But there was no performance to run. The audience was gone. I didn't say anything, just took out my phone and began snapping pictures. One of the kitchen sink, one of the empty fridge, one of the wine-stained rug, the trash, the calendar, still posted with all her handwriting and none of the results. Tanya lowered her eyes. This was harder than I thought. I turned and walked to the living room. Couch cushions out of place, goldfish crackers ground into my carpet, a toddler's sock wedged under the coffee table. I snapped more pictures. "You left," she said, following me, "and everything fell apart." I paused in the archway. "No, baby. Everything showed itself." Terry appeared a minute later. She'd come over when she saw my car pull in. Arms crossed. Quiet. Steady. She scanned the room once and gave me a nod. We'd discussed this moment. She was here to back me up if it turned loud. It didn't. It just turned honest. I turned to Tanya. "Get everyone out by 6. She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. No discussion. "I've already reset the alarm code." "Terry has a key, not you. The party's over." She didn't cry, didn't fight, just nodded. Because the mess spoke for itself. And for once, so did I. At 6:15 p.m., I sat at the same dining table where they'd eaten my food for 23 years. The surface was wiped clean now. No tablecloth, no centerpiece, just wood polished to a fine shine. My binder sat in the middle, the cover labeled in gold marker, Labor and Love, 2010 to 2024. Tanya took the seat across from me. Her husband hovered behind her, arms folded, saying nothing. The house was quieter now. Guests gone, kids packed into the car. Just us and the weight of everything left unspoken for too long. I opened the binder slowly, letting the pages fan out like testimony. "I want to show you something," I said. "Not to shame. To explain." She didn't answer, just nodded. I turned the pages. "Here's a list of every grocery delivery I paid for since 2016. Holidays only. That's $4,830. Flip. Here's 9 years of bank transfers. I totaled them, $17,580. Some were emergencies. Most were assumptions. Flip. Here's the unpaid babysitting. 42 days. Market rate, $3,200. Flip. Utilities. Last December's spike alone cost me $412. Over 10 Christmases, add $3,000 more. I looked up. Her face was still, pale. These aren't complaints. They're facts. And I let it happen because I thought being needed was the same as being loved. I slid the final page toward her. A notarized letter from Mr. Braddock at the bank. It read, "To whom it may concern. Effective immediately, Ramona Ellis is under no financial obligation to Tanya Brooks. She has canceled all auto transfers and limited external account access." Tanya touched the edge of the paper like it might shock her. "You had this done officially?" "I did." She swallowed. "So that's it?" "No," I said gently. "That's the beginning." She looked away, blinking hard. "You think I'm ungrateful?" I didn't flinch. "I think you've forgotten I'm a person, a woman, a mother, yes, but not your employee, not your cook, not your backup plan." Silence. Then quietly, "I didn't mean to take so much, but you did," I said. "And now it's time to carry your own holidays." She didn't argue. She just sat there, hands clasped. And for the first time in years, maybe since she was 10. Tanya didn't fill the silence with excuses or tears or jokes. She just nodded. I stood, slowly, closed the binder. You're still welcome here, but not uninvited, and not unpaid. In energy, in respect, in effort. Behind me, the wind moved the curtains just slightly. The house felt different now, calmer, tighter. I had said my piece, and the receipts had spoken for me. At 7 p.m., with the sunset staining the sky in streaks of orange and plum, I stood on my front porch and handed Tanya a single key. It wasn't hers. It was a copy of the one she'd used all these years. The old one. The locket fit had been changed that morning. The new brass deadbolt gleamed against the chipped blue paint of my door. Fresh, firm, final. Tanya stared at the key in her palm like it weighed more than metal. You changed the locks. I nodded. Yesterday, after I got back, she turned the key over slowly. I don't get to come in anymore? You get to be invited, I said. And that starts with respect. She looked at me for a long time. Really looked. Not like I was her ride or her backup or her built-in blessing. Just me. Her mother. A woman with limits. A woman with a door. And I think something clicked. Behind her, the minivan idled with her kids strapped in the back. Her husband had already gotten in, arms folded, pretending this was nothing. But Tanya stood still. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just whispered. I didn't know I made you feel like a stranger in your own house. You didn't, I said gently. You made me a fixture. She flinched. I softened. But you can start fresh, if you want. She gave a short nod and tucked the old key into her purse like a relic. Then she walked down the steps. Halfway to the van, she paused. You gonna be okay here by yourself? I smiled. Tanya, I've always been okay. That was never the problem. She got in, drove away. And I stood there for a while, hands in my coat pockets, head tipped toward the sky. On the door behind me, the new lock clicked when I turned it. Inside, a small security sticker now glinted in the window pane. Monitored, protected, secured. Cost me $132 at the locksmith's in cash, worth every penny. Terry waved from her porch. I waved back. The porch light flicked on by timer, soft and golden. The rug had been vacuumed. The fridge was mine again. My silence was no longer suffocating. It was sanctuary. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a new key, the real one, warm from my hand, full of promise. I slid it onto a ring all its own. No others attached. Just one woman, one house, one decision. This wasn't revenge. It was recovery. This year, I gave the biggest gift I'd ever wrapped, absence. And on the other side of that wrapping paper, dignity, boundaries, and peace. I turned the key in the new lock, stepped inside, and closed the door. Behind me, noise, expectation, history. Ahead, quiet earned space. And at the center of it all, finally, firmly, me.